Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated and give us your opening statement.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to testify in front of you today. They are a critical reminder of our central mission here at the Department of Justice, protecting the safety and security of the American people.
I've got to say, it's hard to believe what just went down in the courtroom. Pam Bondi, who used to be a big deal as an attorney general and was always a staunch supporter of Trump, just faced a wild and public legal disaster. In a shocking turn of events, she came clean in court about some pretty serious stuff, admitting to carrying out horrific crimes like destroying evidence, tampering with documents, and even committing perjury. After her testimony, a federal judge didn't waste any time. She instantly revoked Bondi's law license and ordered her detention right there. Judge Tanya Chutkan was clearly not holding back, labeling Bondi's actions as deliberate lies told under oath that were meant to obstruct justice. It's clear the judge felt that such serious misconduct needed immediate consequences rather than letting her roam free until sentencing. In what felt like an intense interrogation, Bondi had to acknowledge that she'd removed documents and lied to federal investigators about her involvement in Trump-related probes and alleged election interference schemes. What made matters worse for her was the mountain of evidence against her, including texts, phone records, and testimony from witnesses. Prosecutors are calling it an absolutely airtight case, which means conviction seems almost guaranteed. And this could lead to a hefty prison sentence that sends a loud message about accountability for high-ranking officials who try to dodge justice. And just so you know, I'm all for cutting through the noise of the mainstream media. That's why we started Pump Politics, to bring you the real stories with genuine context and no corporate fluff.
Attorney General Pam Bondi has spent the last few hours fielding questions from members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's been a tense and confrontational hearing between Bondi and Democratic senators so far. CBS News correspondent Chanel Call has been listening in. Chanel, thank you so much for joining us today. Why is this hearing happening, and what have you heard so far?
Well, hey, Muga, good to see you. So this is an annual Justice Oversight Committee meeting, but it comes after former FBI Director James Comey was indicted by a federal grand jury. So some Democratic lawmakers now accusing the Justice Department of sort of going after people that are perceived to be enemies of President Donald Trump. Attorney General Pamela Bondi, who you see here today, facing some questions about a wide swath of topics, of issues, including her handling of the Epstein files, also the existence of that so-called client list. She was also asked today, Mugo, about the Justice Department hiring January 6ers and the Trump administration's move to deploy National Guard troops to various cities across the country.
Senator, as Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan was subjected to a full review by the FBI, agents, and DOJ prosecutors.
In the courtroom, the atmosphere turned intense the moment Bondi was forced to face some harsh realities. Observers said her expression shifted to pure shock as the judge dismantled her defenses with what felt like undeniable evidence. At first, Bondi tried to brush off the document issues as innocent mistakes and routine procedural slip-ups, but that narrative didn't last long. As Judge Chutkan walked through the evidence, forensic analysis of deleted files, time-stamped communications suggesting coordination to erase materials, and witness accounts describing Bondi personally destroying documents, it became painfully obvious that continuing to deny everything would only make things worse. Cornered by the facts, Bondi eventually admitted to criminal behavior, a moment that stunned everyone watching. The courtroom reacted instantly. Gasps echoed through the gallery, and even some of Bondi's own attorneys looked visibly shaken, as if they finally realized how bad the situation had become. This was someone whose entire career was built on prosecuting others and projecting a tough-on-crime image. Now she was standing there, openly admitting she had become a criminal herself, a personal and professional collapse that will follow her for the rest of her life. Judge Chutkan responded without hesitation. She revoked Bondi's law license on the spot and ordered her detention instead of allowing her to remain free while awaiting sentencing. The message was unmistakable. This level of obstruction of justice demanded immediate and serious consequences. Allowing someone who crossed ethical and legal lines this blatantly to walk free and continue practicing law would have sent the wrong signal. Permanent revocation of a law license is one of the harshest penalties an attorney can face. It doesn't just end a career. It strips away credentials earned over decades and permanently marks someone as having violated the core ethical standards of the legal profession. The speed of the decision, without a drawn-out disciplinary process, only underscored how overwhelming and clear the evidence against Bondi was. The judge appeared to believe the facts spoke loudly enough on their own. Then came the detention order, which carried its own weight. Typically, defendants remain free on bail between conviction and sentencing unless there's a flight risk or a threat to public safety. But Judge Chutkan clearly concluded that Bondi's status, resources, and the seriousness of her crimes justified immediate incarceration. Bondi herself made key admissions about removing and destroying documents and about her involvement in illegal activities tied to Trump's election interference scheme, sealing the court's decision. These admissions go far beyond Bondi's personal legal troubles. They potentially open the door for prosecutors to uncover leads and evidence pointing to others close to Trump who may have engaged in similar acts of obstruction. When someone at Bondi's level, a former state attorney general, gets pulled into a scandal like this, it has the power to unravel much larger connections. It's especially shocking because Bondi wasn't just any official. She was entrusted with sensitive information and played a central role in shaping legal strategy. Yet she has now admitted to destroying evidence and coordinating with others to interfere with investigations. That raises serious questions about who else may have been involved and what they were so desperate to hide that they were willing to break federal law to keep it buried. Prosecutors have already indicated in court that they may not even need Bondi's cooperation, given how overwhelming the evidence appears to be. Still, if they decide to leverage her testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence, her insider knowledge of Trump's legal maneuvers, combined with her direct role in obstructing investigations, could turn her into a critical witness. She could provide insights that outside investigators simply could not access. Now, it's important to take a closer look at the misconduct Bondi openly admitted to. Each of these actions represents a serious violation of both law and ethics, which explains why Judge Chutkan believed immediate and severe consequences were necessary. When all the details are laid out, it becomes clear why this case is being viewed as a turning point for accountability in investigations connected to Trump. Destroying evidence and tampering with documents during a federal investigation are not minor infractions. These actions strike at the heart of the justice system itself, undermining its ability to uncover the truth and hold people accountable. When individuals destroy evidence, they aren't just protecting themselves. They are actively threatening the integrity of the entire legal process. They weren't just covering for themselves, they were obstructing justice, making it nearly impossible for investigators and juries to reach informed decisions based on the full set of facts. The documents Bondi admitted to destroying were directly tied to investigations into Trump's campaign and his efforts to overturn election results. That means her actions may have seriously blocked evidence connected to major crimes, including election interference, conspiracy, and abuse of power. There's a critical difference here. It's one thing to passively fail to preserve records. It's something entirely different to actively destroy them. Bondi wasn't careless. She was deleting electronic files, shredding physical documents, and coordinating with others to conceal the truth. That level of intent dramatically escalates the severity of what she's facing. The situation becomes even more serious when you look at the perjury charges. Bondi is accused of lying to investigators about her role in destroying documents, what she knew about the materials that existed, and her involvement in Trump-related election interference efforts. Perjury strikes at the core of the legal system. When someone lies under oath, it corrupts the fact-finding process and can result in innocent people being convicted while guilty parties walk free. What makes this especially alarming is who Bondi is. As a former attorney general and experienced prosecutor, she fully understood the consequences of lying under oath. The fact that she chose to do it anyway raises serious questions about her judgment. It suggests either extreme arrogance or an overwhelming fear of what the truth would reveal, and neither explanation reflects well on her. Judge Chutkan made it clear that Bondi's lies were intentional and designed to obstruct justice. This wasn't about confusion, misunderstandings, or simple errors. It was about someone who knowingly decided that lying served her interests, fully aware that it was illegal and a direct violation of her ethical duties as an attorney. And then there's the forensic evidence that led the case to this point, evidence that proved difficult to escape. Modern investigations have powerful tools capable of uncovering attempts to erase digital trails and destroy documents, even when someone believes they've covered their tracks. In Bondi's case, those tools exposed exactly what she tried so hard to hide. The forensic analysis uncovered deleted electronic files pulled back from backup servers and devices Bondi believed were completely wiped. It didn't just recover the files themselves, it exposed the metadata, showing exactly when those files were accessed, deleted, and the communications surrounding those actions. This level of digital forensics is incredibly advanced, making it nearly impossible to erase electronic evidence without leaving behind a trail. And that's where Bondi made a critical mistake. She appeared to underestimate just how capable modern investigators really are, a major oversight for someone with her background. Given her experience, she should have known better. The evidence, including text messages and phone records, paints a clear picture of Bondi coordinating with associates, discussing what needed to be erased and how to explain the missing documents afterward. In some of those conversations, they openly acknowledged that what they were doing was illegal. Still, they justified it as necessary to protect Trump and his interests. That justification didn't hold up once witnesses began cooperating. Former colleagues and individuals connected to Trump's legal operations chose to work with investigators rather than risk serious legal consequences themselves. These witnesses provided detailed accounts of meetings where Bondi discussed destroying evidence. They recalled specific instructions she gave about which documents needed to disappear and made it clear that she fully understood the criminal nature of those actions. Even so, she convinced herself it was acceptable, driven either by loyalty to Trump or fear of what could happen if certain information became public. When prosecutors have multiple witnesses telling consistent stories that align perfectly with forensic findings and documentary evidence, it creates what they call a belt and suspenders case. In other words, even if one piece of evidence were challenged or excluded, there would still be more than enough left to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's precisely why prosecutors told the court they may not even need Bondi's cooperation to move forward. They already have evidence from so many independent sources that they can move forward without Bondi saying a single word. That strength is a big reason Judge Chutkan decided to order immediate detention. The court weighed several key factors, including the seriousness of the crimes and Bondi's access to resources that could make fleeing a real possibility. But there was also a clear message being sent here. Obstruction of justice at this level will not be treated lightly. Federal judges are given broad discretion when deciding whether a defendant can remain free on bail or must be detained until trial or sentencing. They consider things like flight risk, public safety, and the overall nature of the charges. In this case, the judge appeared to conclude that Pam Bondi, with her legal expertise and political connections, simply could not be trusted. Her willingness to tamper with evidence and lie under oath seriously undermined any argument for leniency. What makes this especially significant is Bondi's past role as a state attorney general. She once held immense power and public responsibility, yet prosecutors argue she used that position to help enable criminal behavior. Courts are rarely forgiving when officials entrusted with enforcing the law are accused of betraying that trust to obstruct justice. When those meant to uphold the legal system cross the line into criminal conduct, it shakes public confidence at a fundamental level. That's why this case is drawing so much attention from legal experts. For years, high-level officials have often escaped serious consequences for obstruction and perjury. This case stands out as a moment where the system appears determined to respond forcefully, regardless of status, influence, or past power. For a long time, cases like this often went nowhere. Either charges were never filed, or when they were, the punishments felt minimal. Nothing that truly matched the seriousness of the wrongdoing. That's why Judge Chutkan's hard line in Bondi's case stands out. The immediate revocation of her law license and detention without bail signals a shift. She made it clear that real public consequences are necessary and that powerful figures who obstruct justice will no longer be handled with kid gloves. If Bondi ultimately receives a lengthy prison sentence, it could set a powerful precedent for how similar misconduct by high-ranking officials is treated moving forward. It may even serve as a warning to others in positions of power who believe their titles and connections allow them to destroy evidence or mislead investigators without consequences. As for what Bondi's dramatic fall from grace means for the broader Trump legal saga, that's where things get even more complex. This case doesn't exist in isolation. It fits into a much larger web of investigations involving Trump and members of his inner circle, all centered around alleged efforts to conceal wrongdoing. The immediate takeaway is this: prosecutors now have a high-profile conviction on the board. That opens the door to new cooperation deals and deeper evidence gathering against others involved in similar obstruction efforts. And that brings the focus right back to Pam Bondi. Once a trusted figure within Trump's inner circle, Bondi was deeply involved in key legal strategies, participated in meetings, and handled sensitive communications. If she decides to cooperate and provide information about others involved in hiding evidence, she could become a critical witness against Trump and some of his closest advisors. With her insider knowledge, she holds details that could significantly impact the next phase of these investigations. Her ability to clarify what Trump knew, or what he may have directly ordered, could become the crucial evidence needed to establish his criminal responsibility. Even if Bondi ultimately refuses to cooperate, her case alone sends a powerful warning. It shows just how severe the consequences can be for anyone involved in obstruction or cover-up efforts: intense scrutiny, prison time, and the complete destruction of their careers. This reality dramatically changes the calculation for Trump's associates who may be facing similar exposure. Watching someone as well-connected as Bondi end up in custody, staring down the possibility of years behind bars, makes cooperation with prosecutors look far more appealing than fighting charges and hoping for leniency. Once one person decides to flip, it often triggers a chain reaction. More cooperation, more evidence, and more prosecutions. Bondi's conviction and rapid detention may be exactly what sparks that snowball effect among Trump's legal team and other insiders who believed their loyalty would shield them from consequences. The illusion of safety disappears quickly when someone at the center falls this hard. Her loss of a law license and admission of criminal conduct also raises uncomfortable questions about oversight. It forces scrutiny on what the Florida bar and other professional organizations may have known, and whether warning signs were ignored because of her political connections. These organizations have a responsibility to investigate misconduct and act decisively when ethical rules are broken. As this case unfolds, it's prompting deeper conversations about how the legal system truly operates when powerful individuals are involved. If complaints or red flags were dismissed due to political influence, that points to a serious failure in professional accountability. The integrity of the legal profession depends on its willingness to hold even its most influential members to the same standards, and to impose real consequences when those standards are violated. Bondi's situation forces a serious moment of reflection on whether disciplinary systems are truly doing their job, or whether they're being influenced by the same political pressures that appear to have driven her to obstruct justice on behalf of Donald Trump. This case underscores a critical lesson about accountability and the rule of law, one that could genuinely reshape the landscape if it leads to similar action against other high-level officials who attempt to cover their tracks. For years, there's been a widespread belief that powerful people can get away with conduct that would send ordinary individuals straight to prison, largely because they can afford elite legal teams and benefit from institutional hesitation. Prosecutors have often been reluctant to pursue controversial cases against well-known figures who enjoy advantages the average person simply doesn't have. What Judge Chutkan did in Bondi's case represents a direct challenge to that two-tiered justice system. She acted swiftly, detained a former attorney general without delay, revoked her law license, and sent a clear signal that influence and status do not provide immunity from consequences. It was a firm assertion that the law applies equally, even at the highest levels. This sets a powerful precedent. It shows that real accountability is possible, even for those at the top of the political and legal hierarchy. And if this approach becomes more common, it could fundamentally change how powerful individuals assess the risks of illegal behavior. The assumption that status alone can shield them may no longer hold, and that realization could have lasting effects across the entire system. When you look at Bondi's likely sentencing range, federal guidelines for obstruction of justice and perjury typically point to substantial prison time, especially when those actions are tied to serious offenses like interfering with elections. What's striking is just how far Pam Bondi has fallen. She went from holding one of the highest legal offices as a former attorney general to becoming someone convicted of major crimes. Given the circumstances, a lengthy prison sentence isn't just a possibility. It appears increasingly likely. The aggravating factors in her case are hard to ignore: abuse of public trust, coordination with others to obstruct justice, the intentional destruction of evidence, and repeated lies under oath. All of that places her squarely on the harsher end of the sentencing guidelines. The judge's decision to keep Bondi in custody while she awaits sentencing sends another clear signal. Courts rarely detain defendants before sentencing if they're planning to be lenient. This detention order strongly suggests that the court views her conduct as serious enough to warrant real prison time, not probation or a symbolic punishment. And the impact of her conviction goes far beyond Trump's legal troubles. It raises deeper questions about corruption in politics and how individuals in positions of power can misuse their authority for personal or political loyalty instead of serving the public interest. Bondi's path, from state attorney general to outspoken Trump ally to convicted criminal attempting to conceal wrongdoing, is a stark example of how political loyalty can override judgment, even for those sworn to uphold the law. The lengths Bondi went to in order to protect Trump, even at the cost of her own career and reputation, reveal a deeply troubling dynamic about the influence he has held over those around him. It's alarming to see how professional and ethical standards have broken down within parts of the legal and political world. Understanding how Bondi made such catastrophic decisions is essential, not just for this case, but for preventing similar failures in the future and rebuilding standards that place the law and ethics above political loyalty. For those closely following this story, her fall from grace is both a warning and a rare moment of hope. It highlights the dangers of corruption, but also shows that accountability is possible when judges and prosecutors are willing to do their jobs fairly and without bias. Seeing someone so closely tied to Trump actually face serious consequences is no small thing, especially in a system where powerful figures so often avoid real accountability. What makes this even more unsettling is how long it took for action to finally happen. It's striking that meaningful consequences only followed once overwhelming proof emerged, including Bondi's own admissions. That delay exposes how flawed the system can be when dealing with wealthy, well-connected defendants who have the resources to push back against prosecution at every step. The goal now should be to ensure that Bondi's case isn't just a rare exception that offers temporary relief. It should mark the beginning of a new standard, one where real accountability is the rule, not the anomaly, and where justice doesn't depend on status, influence, or political connections. Until that becomes the norm, the larger issues of inequality and trust in the justice system will continue to linger.